Walk all the way to your sister's house. Figure it out yourself. I hope you freeze on the way." Those were the words of my son before he slammed the door in my face. I was barefoot, in my pajamas. Outside, snow was falling with a force I hadn't seen in years. The cold cut into my skin as if it were thousands of invisible needles. My feet sank into the snow and I couldn't feel my toes anymore. The wind was blowing so hard I could barely keep my eyes open. The street was empty, dark, not a soul in sight. I stood there in front of the door of my own house, the house where I raised that man, where I gave him everything, where I spent every dollar I had so he could go to college, so he could have a better future than mine. And now he was leaving me to die outside, as if I were trash. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if it was from the cold or the rage. I looked for a rock on the ground. I thought about throwing it at the window, about smashing the glass, about screaming until the neighbors came out. But my body wouldn't respond anymore. The snow kept falling. I felt like my legs were going to give out at any moment. Then I heard a voice. "Mrs. Betty?" I turned slowly. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. An older woman appeared from the other side of the fence, elegant, with a long, dark cashmere coat. Her face was serene, but firm. Victoria Morgan, that's who it was. The next-door neighbor. The woman who always waved from a distance, but with whom I had never exchanged more than 2 words. She was staring at me, without pity, without surprise, as if she already knew exactly what was happening. "My husband is your son's boss, and I own the company where he works." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. "Come take shelter in my house. Tomorrow we will make him kneel and beg for your forgiveness." I couldn't answer. My throat was closed. My lips were chapped from the cold. I just nodded. Victoria extended her hand toward me, a firm hand. Sure. I took it with the few remaining strengths I had. She helped me cross the low fence that separated our properties. When I stepped onto her lawn, I felt something inside me break. It wasn't relief. Not yet. It was something deeper. It was the certainty that everything I had kept silent for years was about to come to light. Victoria led me toward her house, a mansion compared to my own. The lights were on. It was warm inside, a warmth that brutally contrasted with the frozen hell I had just escaped. She sat me down on a sofa next to the fireplace. She covered me with a thick blanket. She didn't say anything for several minutes. She just watched me while I tried to catch my breath. Finally, she spoke. "I know what he's done to you. It's not the first time I've seen him throw you out. But tonight was different. Tonight he crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed." I looked at her, not entirely understanding. How could she know so much? How could she be so sure? "Michael, your son, has been working for my husband for 5 years. George has him in an important position. Very important. He earns more than $10,000 a month, and all of that was possible because I personally recommended him." I felt the air escape my chest. Michael had never told me anything. He never mentioned that his job depended on the Morgans. He never thanked me. He never acknowledged anything. And Victoria continued. "But he believes he got there on his own merit. He believes he's untouchable, that he can do whatever he wants without consequences. And that's why he treats you like that, because he thinks no one is watching." She moved closer to me. Her gaze was harsh, but not cruel. It was the look of someone who had seen too much and wouldn't tolerate any more. "Early tomorrow, Michael is going to receive a call. He's going to be summoned to my husband's office, and there he will understand that every dollar he has earned, every promotion he has received, every crumb of power he has, was thanks to me. I still couldn't speak. Tears began to fall down my cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of something I couldn't name. Perhaps contained rage, perhaps hope. Victoria placed her hand on mine. I am not going to allow a man like him to continue destroying his mother, not while I have the power to stop him. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed seated by the fire, wrapped in that blanket, feeling my body regain warmth, but my mind remained trapped in the cold of that slammed door. I thought about all the times Michael had yelled at me, about all the times he had taken my own money, about all the times he told me I was a burden, that I was old, that I was useless. And now, for the first time in years, someone was telling me that wasn't true. Someone was telling me he was going to pay. When the sun began to rise, Victoria came into the living room with a hot cup of Earl Grey tea. She handed it to me without saying a word. I took it with hands that were still trembling. Today, everything begins, Betty. Today, your son is going to learn that no job, no title, no amount of money is worth more than a mother's dignity. I nodded in silence, because for the first time in a long time, I believed someone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. It all started 3 years ago, when my husband passed away. His name was Robert. He was a quiet man, hard-working. We never had money to spare, but we never went without either. We lived simply for 40 years. And when he left me the house paid off and some savings, $35,000 in total. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for me to live out the rest of my days with dignity. Michael found out the same day as the funeral. I remember him hugging me in front of everyone. He told me not to worry, that he would take care of me, that I would never be lacking anything. I believed him. He was my son, my only son. How could I not believe him? 2 weeks later, he came to my house with some papers. Mum, I need you to sign this. It's to protect your money, so they don't take it with taxes. Trust me. I signed without reading, because I trusted him, because he was my son. What I didn't know was that those papers gave him total access to my bank account. Absolute control over every dollar my husband had left for me. At first, everything seemed normal. Michael would visit me twice a week. He would bring groceries. He would ask me how I was. I thought he was a good son, that he was keeping his word. But after 6 months, something changed. The visits became shorter, colder. He would arrive in a hurry, drop the bags in the kitchen, and leave without even sitting down for a cup of coffee with me. And when I asked him for money for something, he always had an excuse. Mum, I can't right now. I'm tight this month. Mum, I already gave you some last week. You can't spend so much. Mum, you have to learn to manage your money better. I didn't understand. That was my money, the money Robert had left me. Why did I have to ask my own son for permission to use it? One day I dared to ask him how much was left in the account. He looked at me with annoyance. Why do you want to know that? Don't you trust me? I shut up. I felt guilty for having asked. Months passed like this. I lived on the bare minimum. He controlled every expense, every purchase, every move. And meanwhile, he was buying expensive clothes, changing cars, going out to eat at upscale restaurants every weekend. I saw him in the photos his wife posted on social media, smiling, toasting, living a life that seemed to have no limits. And I was still in my house, alone, asking permission to buy my own medication. A year ago, everything got worse. Michael arrived one night with his wife and my granddaughter Sarah. They sat in the living room. No one was smiling. "Mum, we need to talk." I sat across from them. My heart was pounding hard. I knew something bad was coming. "You can't keep living alone. You're old. You could fall. You could get sick. You need someone to take care of you." "I don't need anyone to take care of me, Michael. I'm fine." "No, you're not fine. That's why we've decided you're coming to live with us." I felt a strange relief. I thought maybe he really cared about me, that he wanted me close. But then he added something else. "We're going to rent out your house. That way we get some extra cash. And you're going to help with the expenses of the house where you'll be living. It's only fair." That's when I understood everything. He didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to take my house too. And I, as always, didn't say anything. I packed my things. I left the house where I had lived for 40 years. And I went to live with him. But it wasn't to live with him. It was to live like a servant. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to prepare breakfast. I cleaned the whole house. I did the laundry. I ironed. I cooked all 3 meals of the day. And when I finished, I collapsed exhausted in a small room at the back of the house. A room without heat, with an old bed and a window that didn't close properly. Michael never gave me money. He said I didn't need it anymore because he was giving me shelter and food. But the food I prepared was bought with the rent money from my house. The roof I slept under was paid for with my own savings. I wasn't a guest. I was a prisoner. His wife spoke to me with contempt. She treated me as if I were a burden, as if my presence dirtied her home. And Sarah, my granddaughter, didn't even look at me anymore. She had learned from her parents that I was worthless. The months passed. I faded away. I stopped talking. I stopped asking. I stopped existing. Until one night, everything exploded. Michael came home drunk. He came in screaming, saying he had a bad day at work, that his boss had put pressure on him, that everyone was mistreating him. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. He came in and shoved me. "It's your fault. Everything is your fault. I have to support a useless old woman who's good for nothing." I remained silent, as always. But that night he didn't stop. He kept shouting. He kept insulting me. And when I tried to leave the kitchen, he blocked my path. "Where do you think you're going? You stay here until I say so." His wife appeared in the doorway, but she didn't defend me. She just crossed her arms and looked away. Michael grabbed my arm forcefully. He dragged me toward the front door. I tried to resist, but he was stronger. He opened the door with a bang. It was snowing outside. "Get out. Get out right now. I don't want to see you in my house again." "Michael, please. It's freezing. I don't have any shoes." "I don't care. Walk all the way to your sister's house. Figure it out yourself. I hope you freeze on the way." And he shoved me out. The door slammed shut behind me with a dry thud. I heard the lock turn. I heard his footsteps walking away, and I stayed there, barefoot, shaking, begging for someone to open that door. But no one did. I knocked on the door. I screamed his name. I begged. Nothing. The snow was falling on me. The wind cut through me. My feet were sinking into the ice. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. And then I thought I was going to die there. That I was going to die alone, abandoned by the son I had given everything to. It was at that moment that I heard Victoria's voice, and everything changed. The cold was different from anything I had felt before. It wasn't just temperature, it was pure pain. It was the certainty that my body was minutes away from giving up. My feet were no longer mine. I saw them sinking into the snow, but I couldn't feel it. It was as if they had ceased to exist, as if someone had cut them off and I was still walking on frozen stumps. My hands were burning. an icy burning that travelled up my arms and settled in my chest. I tried to rub them against my pajamas, but the fabric was soaked. Every movement was useless. The wind was blowing so hard that I struggled to stay standing. It pushed me backward, sideways, as if nature itself wanted to knock me down, and I was still in front of that closed door. My son's door. The door of the house that was supposed to be my refuge. I knocked again, with my fist, with my open palm, with what little strength I had left. "Michael, please, open up. I'm going to die out here." Silence. I knew he was on the other side. I knew he was listening to me. But he didn't care. Maybe he even wanted it to happen. Maybe that was exactly what he was hoping for. That I would freeze. That I would disappear. That I would stop being a problem for him. I looked out at the street. It was completely empty. There were no cars. There were no lights on in the other houses. It was late. Too late. No one was going to come out and help me. I thought about my sister. She lived 4 miles away, 4 miles barefoot, in pajamas, in the snow. It was impossible. I wasn't going to make it. I knew it. But I also couldn't just stand there waiting for death. So I took a step, then another. Every step was torture. The snow got between my toes. It cut the soles of my feet. I felt the skin splitting open. I felt something wet that wasn't just snow. It was blood. I moved 10 feet, 15. Then my legs gave way. I fell to my knees on the ice. The impact was brutal. A sharp pain shot through my kneecaps. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the wind. I tried to get up. I couldn't. My arms were trembling too much. My muscles wouldn't respond. I stayed there, on my knees, my hands resting on the snow, breathing with difficulty, feeling the cold seep deeper, settling into my bones. I looked up at the living room window. The light was on. I saw Michael's shadow moving inside. Calm, comfortable, warm. And me, outside, dying. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't my body. It was something worse. It was the image I had of my son, the image of the child I had raised, of the man I thought he was. That image shattered, and in its place remained the truth, the raw, terrible truth that my own son hated me, that he wished for my death, that I wasn't his mother, I was his enemy. I searched for a rock on the ground. My fingers were so stiff that I could barely close my hand, but I managed to grab one. It was small, but enough to break the glass. I thought about throwing it, about making him come out, to force him to look at me, to see what he had done to me. I raised my arm. I aimed at the window, but I didn't throw it, because at that moment I heard the voice. "Mrs. Betty?" I turned slowly. Every movement was a monumental effort. My neck was so tense that I felt something was going to snap. And I saw her, Victoria Morgan, standing by the fence, in her long coat, with her firm gaze, as if she had been waiting for that moment all night. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look scared. She looked prepared. "My husband is your son's boss, and I own the company where he works." Those words hit me like a bucket of hot water in the middle of the storm. "Come take shelter in my house. Tomorrow we will make him kneel and beg for your forgiveness." I wanted to answer. I wanted to say something, but my mouth didn't work. My lips were cracked, my tongue was dry. I only managed to make a choked sound. Victoria extended her hand toward me, a firm hand, without gloves, as if the cold didn't affect her. I let go of the rock. I let it fall onto the snow. and with the last remnant of strength I had left, I lifted my hand and took hers. She pulled me with a strength I hadn't expected. She helped me stand up. She held me when my legs failed again. "Come on, you can't stay here another second." She guided me toward the low fence that separated the two properties. It was barely 2 feet high. Under normal circumstances, I would have jumped it without a problem. But now it was like climbing a mountain. Victoria helped me cross it. She held me by the waist. She pushed me carefully. And when my feet touched the other side, I felt I had crossed more than just a fence. I had crossed into another world. Her lawn was clean, well kept. The snow wasn't accumulating because they had radiant floor heating underneath. My feet left red stains on the white surface. Victoria didn't say anything. She just led me toward the entrance of her house. She opened the door, and the heat that came out from inside was like a hug. I stumbled inside. My legs barely held me up. Victoria closed the door behind us, and in that instant, the outside world ceased to exist. I no longer heard the wind. I no longer felt the cutting cold. There was only silence, and warmth, and light. Victoria took me to a huge sofa in front of a lit fireplace. She sat me down carefully. She removed my soaked pajamas and covered me with a blanket so thick it seemed to weigh 20 pounds. "Don't talk yet. First you need to warm up." I nodded. My teeth were chattering so hard I thought they were going to break. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't stop it. Victoria disappeared for a moment. She returned with a hot cup of tea. She placed it between my hands. I tried to hold it, but I was trembling too much. She had to help me bring it to my lips. The first sip burned my tongue, but I didn't care. I needed that warmth inside me. I needed to feel that I was still alive. I drank slowly, sip after sip, feeling the hot liquid go down my throat and expand through my chest. Victoria sat across from me. She kept watching me, but not with pity, with something different, with determination. "I know what he's done to you. It's not the first time I've seen him throw you out." I looked at her, not understanding. How could she know? How could she have seen something that I myself had hidden for so long? "Michael, your son, has been working for my husband for 5 years, and everything he has, everything he is, he owes to me." The words hit me harder than the wind outside. Michael had never told me anything. He never mentioned the Morgans. He never thanked me. He never acknowledged that someone else had helped him. And now this woman was standing in front of me, telling me she had the power to destroy him. "Early tomorrow he's going to receive a call. He's going to be summoned to my husband's office, and there he will understand who is in control." I still couldn't speak. Tears began to fall. I couldn't stop them. I didn't want to stop them, because for the first time in 3 years, someone was defending me. Someone was telling me that I didn't deserve this, and that certainty was warmer than any fireplace. I spent the whole night awake, not because I wasn't sleepy, but because every time I closed my eyes, I felt the cold again. I saw that closed door again. I heard Michael's voice again, telling me he hoped I would freeze. Victoria had given me clean clothes, soft pajama pants, a thick shirt, wool socks. Everything was too big for me, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt like someone was treating me with dignity. I stayed seated by the fireplace until the sun began to rise. The flames burned slowly. The warmth enveloped me. But my mind didn't rest. I thought about everything, about the 3 years I had lost, about the money Michael had taken from me, about the house he had snatched away, about the life he had stolen from me. And I thought about Victoria, about how she had appeared right at the exact moment, as if she had been waiting, as if she had known something like this was going to happen. When I heard footsteps on the stairs, I looked up. Victoria was coming down slowly. She was wearing an impeccable suit, light grey, elegant. Her hair was pulled back, her face rested, as if she hadn't spent the night rescuing a woman from death. "Good morning," Victoria said. "How do you feel?" "Better, thank you." She smiled slightly. She sat across from me in a leather armchair. "Call me Victoria. There's no need for formalities between us." I nodded. I wasn't used to that. To someone speaking to me as if we were equals. Victoria poured 2 cups of coffee from a carafe on the table. She passed one to me. The aroma was strong, comforting. "I want to tell you something. Something your son never told you." I took the cup with both hands. They were still trembling a little. 5 years ago, Michael came to our company looking for a job. He had good references. He had studied business management. He seemed capable, but he wasn't exceptional. There were better candidates. Victoria took a sip of coffee. Her eyes didn't leave mine. But one day, during a selection meeting, my husband George mentioned that one of the candidates was the son of a woman named Betty Sanchez. And I stopped dead in my tracks. Why? Because I knew you, even if you don't remember me. I looked at her, confused. I didn't remember seeing her before moving into that house. 20 years ago, I worked at a hospital. I was a nurse. I was newly married to George. He was still building his company. We didn't have money. We were struggling. Victoria placed her cup on the table. She leaned forward slightly. One day I got sick. I had a severe infection. I needed urgent surgery. But we didn't have health insurance. We had no way to pay. The doctors told me I had to wait, to look for some government aid program. She paused. Her gaze became more intense. But you were there, in the hospital, not as a patient. You were visiting a friend, and you saw me sitting in the waiting room, crying, desperate. I tried to remember, but my memory was blurry. So many years had passed. You approached me. You asked me what was wrong. I told you. And you, without a second thought, took out your checkbook and paid half of the surgery, $5,000. I felt the air leave my chest. I told you I couldn't accept it, that I didn't know you, that I had no way to pay you back. And you told me something I never forgot. Victoria repeated my words as if she had them recorded in her memory. I don't need you to pay me back. I just need you to help someone else when you have the chance. That's how the world works when it works well. Tears began to fall down my cheeks. I didn't remember that moment. I didn't remember that woman, but I remembered doing things like that. I remembered helping people without expecting anything in return. That surgery saved my life, Betty. And thanks to that, George and I were able to keep going. The company grew. We did well. Very well. And I never forgot you. Victoria stood up. She walked to the window. She looked outside, toward Michael's house. "So when I found out your son was looking for a job, I personally asked George to hire him, not because he deserved it, but because you had saved my life." I couldn't speak. I just cried in silence. We gave him an important position. We paid him well, $10,500 a month. We promoted him twice in 5 years, all thanks to you. Victoria turned back to me. But he never knew that. We never told him that his job depended on you. We wanted him to believe he had achieved it on his own merit. We thought that would make him more humble, more grateful. She returned to the armchair. She sat across from me. We were wrong. He didn't become humble. He became arrogant, cruel, and I saw it. I saw him treat you badly. I saw him yell at you. I saw him throw you out of his house 6 months ago when you argued about money. You saw that? I saw everything, Betty. Our houses are next to each other. The windows face the same yard. I've seen things that made my blood boil. But I waited. I waited because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to know how far he was capable of going. And last night he went too far. Victoria took my hand. She squeezed it firmly. Now is the time to act. George already knows everything. I told him what happened last night. And he's furious. Not only because Michael did that to you, but because a man like that cannot work at our company. What are you going to do? Today at 9 o'clock in the morning, Michael is going to receive a call. He's going to be summoned to the main office. George is going to tell him the truth. He's going to tell him that everything he has he owes to his mother. And he's going to give him an ultimatum. What kind of ultimatum? Either he begs you for forgiveness on his knees and gives you back every dollar he stole, or he loses his job, he loses his salary, he loses his reputation, he loses everything. I felt a knot in my throat. I didn't know if it was fear or relief. But I need you to tell me something, Betty. Do you want this to happen? Do you want your son to pay for what he did? I remained silent because I didn't know the answer. He was my son, even after everything, even after the cold, even after the slammed door. He was still my son. Victoria waited. She didn't pressure me. She just waited. Finally, I spoke. I want him to know the truth. I want him to know that everything he has, he didn't earn alone. I want him to understand that he used me, that he destroyed me, that he almost killed me. Victoria nodded. Then that is what is going to happen. She stood up. She walked toward the phone on a table by the entrance. She dialed a number. She waited. George. Yes, she agrees. Proceed. She hung up. She turned toward me. It's underway. At 9 o'clock, your son is going to receive the call. At 10 o'clock, he'll be in front of George. And at 11 o'clock, his world is going to collapse. I stayed seated on that sofa, feeling something change inside me. I was no longer just a victim. I was no longer just an abandoned mother. Now I was someone who had power, someone who had an ally, someone who was going to see justice. Victoria sat next to me. But this doesn't end here, Betty. This is just the beginning, because I have a feeling your son is hiding a lot more, and we are going to uncover all of it. How? I'm going to give you a job at the company, an administrative position. You'll have access to files, to records, to information, and you'll be able to investigate what else Michael has been doing with your money. Why would you do that for me? Because 20 years ago, you saved me without expecting anything in return, and now it's my turn to save you. The tears fell again, but this time they weren't of sadness. They were of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. At 9:15 o'clock in the morning, Michael's phone rang. I wasn't there to see it, but Victoria told me afterward how it had been. He was having a calm breakfast. Coffee, toast, as if nothing had happened the night before, as if he hadn't left his mother to die in the snow. When he saw George Morgan's name on the screen, he went pale. His wife asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer. He just answered the call. Michael, I need you to come to the office in 30 minutes. It's urgent. That was all. George hung up without giving him time to ask any questions. Michael arrived at the company at 5 minutes to 10. Victoria told me she had never seen him so nervous. He was sweating, touching the collar of his shirt. He walked quickly down the hall as if he wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. He entered George's office. And there he was, sitting behind his huge desk, his hands crossed, his gaze hard, not smiling. "Sit down." Michael sat down. He tried to maintain his composure. He tried to look confident, but Victoria told me the fear was visible in his eyes. George didn't waste any time. "I want you to tell me something, Michael. Where was your mother last night?" The question caught him by surprise. He blinked several times. He looked for an answer. "She's at home, resting." "Don't lie to me." Michael swallowed. His hands moved restlessly on his legs. "She had a problem. She went out, but she's fine now." "A problem? Went out?" "Michael, your mother was on the verge of freezing to death in the street because you threw her out of your house in her pajamas, in the middle of a snowstorm." The silence that followed was dense, heavy. Michael opened his mouth, but no sound came out. George leaned forward. "And the worst part isn't just that. The worst part is that you work here believing you got here through your own effort, believing you deserve it, believing you're someone important." Michael tried to speak. "Mr. Morgan, I—" "Be quiet. I'm not finished yet." George opened a folder on his desk. He took out some papers. "Do you know who recommended that we hire you 5 years ago? Do you know who insisted on giving you a chance when there were better candidates than you?" Michael shook his head. Panic was reflected on his face. "My wife, Victoria Morgan, the owner of this company." Michael didn't say anything. He just looked at the papers without understanding. "And do you know why my wife did that? Because 20 years ago your mother saved her life. She paid for surgery my wife couldn't afford, $5,000, without knowing her, without expecting anything in return." The words fell on Michael like stones. "So everything you have, every dollar you've earned, every promotion you've received, you owe to your mother, not to you, to her." Michael began to tremble, not from cold, from rage, from shame, from fear. George closed the folder. He leaned back in his chair. "Now I'm going to give you one option, just one. You're going to go home. You're going to bring your mother back. You're going to beg her for forgiveness on your knees. You're going to give her back every dollar you stole from her. And you're going to prove to me that you are capable of being a decent man." Michael tried to protest. "Sir, you don't understand. My mother is complicated. She—" "I'm not interested in your version. I'm interested in the truth. And the truth is you almost killed her last night. If my wife hadn't been there, your mother would be dead. And you would be in jail." The fear in Michael's eyes turned into pure panic. "What do I have to do?" "What I told you. Bring her back. Give her back her money. Beg for her forgiveness. And pray that she forgives you. Because if she doesn't, your career ends here. And I will personally make sure that no company in this city hires you." Michael moved like an automaton. He stood up. He walked out of the office as if in a trance. Victoria was waiting for him in the hallway. He saw her. He tried to say something, but she only looked at him with contempt. "Your mother is at my house, recovering. When you're ready to do the right thing, you can go get her." Michael left the building. He got into his car and sat there for 10 minutes, not moving, not turning on the engine, just staring at the steering wheel. But what happened next, no one expected. That same afternoon, Michael went back to the company. But he didn't go to George's office. He went straight to the Human Resources Department. He spoke with the department head. He told a completely different version of events. "My mother has mental health issues. She's confused. She says things that aren't true. Last night she left the house without telling me. I looked for her all night. I was desperate. And now the Morgans have her at their house. I don't know what they told her, but she is vulnerable. She is being manipulated. Michael continued talking, building his lie calmly, precisely. I just want to protect her, but they are using my mother to attack me. I don't know why. Perhaps because they know I am competing for a major promotion. The human resources head asked him if he had proof of what he was saying. Michael took out his phone. He showed her messages, calls, fake medical records that he had gotten somehow. My mother was hospitalized 2 years ago for episodes of confusion. Here is the report. It was a lie. Everything was a lie. But he presented it with such certainty that the woman began to doubt. I'll look into this. Give me a few days. Michael nodded. He left there with a smile no one saw. When Victoria found out what he had done, her face became rigid. He's playing dirty. He's trying to turn the situation around, to play the victim. I was sitting across from her, feeling the relief I had felt in the morning turn into fear again. What's going to happen now? Victoria didn't answer immediately. She kept looking out the window, thinking. Finally, she spoke. He thinks he can manipulate the narrative. He thinks he can make you look crazy. He thinks he can save himself with lies. But what he doesn't know is that I didn't get to where I am by being naive. I know men like him, and I know how to destroy them. How? Victoria sat next to me. You're going to work at the company, like I said, but not just any position. You're going to work in internal audit. You'll have access to all the financial records, to all the contracts, to everything Michael has signed in the last 5 years. And what am I going to look for? Everything. Every suspicious movement, every inflated expense, every fake invoice, every account that doesn't add up. Because I'm sure your son didn't just steal from you. He's also stealing from the company. I felt a chill. You think he would do that? Victoria looked me straight in the eyes. Betty, a man who is capable of leaving his mother to die in the snow is capable of anything. And at that moment, something changed in me. I no longer felt fear. I felt determination. I'm going to find everything he's hiding. Everything. Victoria smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was a war smile. Good. Because tomorrow you start working. And tomorrow the real investigation begins. That night, while I was lying in the room Victoria had given me, I thought about Michael, about how he had played his card, about how he had tried to make me look crazy. But he didn't know something. I was no longer the broken woman he had left to die outside. I was someone else now, a person who had allies, a person who had power, a person who was going to uncover every secret he was keeping. And when I did, there would be no lie that could save him. On Monday morning, I entered the company for the first time in my life. Not as a visitor, not as someone's mother, but as an employee. Victoria had gotten me a position in the internal audit department. My official job was to review invoices, verify expenses, make sure everything was in order. A discreet job, almost invisible. But we both knew what my real mission was. They gave me a small office on the 3rd floor, a computer, access to the company's digital files, and most importantly, access to the records of the last 5 years. The department manager was named Tanya Rogers. She was a woman in her 50s, serious, efficient. She explained my duties to me in 10 minutes. You're going to check all the invoices that pass through the administration area. If something doesn't add up, you report it to me. Simple. I nodded. I took notes. I tried to look like just an older woman who needed a quiet job. But when Tanya left my office, I sat down in front of that computer and knew it wasn't going to be simple. Because I wasn't there to check just any invoice. I was there to check my son's. I typed his name into the system search engine. Michael Chavez. Hundreds of records appeared, expense reports, reimbursement requests, supplier invoices, signed contracts. Everything he had touched in 5 years. I took a deep breath, and I started reviewing. The first few months seemed normal. Transportation expenses, business meals, small invoices, nothing out of the ordinary. But as I moved forward in time, I started to notice something strange. The expenses were increasing, a lot, and fast. In his first year, Michael had reported expenses for $3,000, normal for someone in his position. But in the second year, that figure rose to $8,000. In the third year, $15,000. And in the last year, $25,000 in reported expenses. I opened the details. Business meals at expensive restaurants, hotels, trips, conferences, everything justified with invoices that seemed legitimate. But something didn't add up. I took one of the invoices. It was from a restaurant called the Steakhouse. It said Michael had taken 3 clients out to dinner. Total, $1,200. The company had reimbursed everything. I looked for more invoices from the same place. There were 7 in total, all for similar amounts, all in the same year. I took note of the dates, and then I did something Michael never imagined I would do. I called the restaurant. "Good morning. This is Betty Sanchez. I work in internal audit at the Morgan Company, and I'm verifying some invoices. Could you confirm if you issued an invoice on the 15th of March last year for $1,200? The receptionist asked me to wait. I heard the sound of a keyboard. Then she came back on the line. "I don't have any record of that invoice in our system." "Are you sure?" "Completely. Our system saves everything, and there was no check for that amount that day. Thank you." I hung up. I felt something cold run down my back. Michael had faked that invoice. I checked the other 6. I called the restaurant again. None were real. That meant my son had stolen more than $8,000 with fake restaurant invoices alone. How much more had he stolen in total? I kept checking. Hotels. I called 2 of them. The reservations didn't exist. The invoices were fake. Conferences. I searched for the events online. Some hadn't even taken place. Others had, but Michael had never attended. Every discovery was worse than the last. My son hadn't just stolen from me. He was stealing from the company that had hired him because of me. I printed everything. Every fake invoice, every suspicious record, every movement that didn't add up. When I finished, I had a pile of papers 2 inches high, and that was just the beginning. That afternoon, I went to Victoria's office. She was reviewing some contracts. When she saw me come in with the folder, she stopped everything. "Did you find something?" I showed her the papers. I explained them one by one. Every fake invoice, every non-existent hotel, every invented conference. Victoria didn't say anything for several minutes. She just read. She checked. She calculated. Finally, she spoke. "This is enough to fire him, and to sue him." I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. I felt something worse. I felt shame, because that man was my son, and I had raised him, and I didn't know when he had turned into this. Victoria noticed my expression. "It's not your fault, Betty. He chose this path, not you." But there was something else, something I needed to know. "Victoria, if he's stealing so much from the company, where is he putting that money?" She looked at me intently. "That is the right question, because if he's faking $25,000 a year in invoices, plus what he stole from you, we're talking about more than $100,000 in total." The figure hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Where is that money?" Victoria closed the folder. That's what we're going to find out. But I need you to keep investigating. I need you to check his bank accounts, his properties, anything in his name. How am I going to do that? Victoria smiled, but it was a cold smile. Because your son made a mistake. When he made you sign those papers to access your account, he put your name as a joint account holder on several of his accounts, probably to move money without raising suspicion. That means you have the legal right to request information about those accounts. Really, Pei? Tomorrow we're going to the bank, and we're going to ask for all the transactions from the last 3 years. That night I couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage, from indignation, from the certainty that my son had used me in a way I hadn't even imagined. He had stolen from me. He had forged my signature. He had used my name to commit fraud. And he had probably done much more. The next day, Victoria and I went to the bank. It was a large branch, cold, with shining floors and employees who spoke in low voices. A young man helped us. We explained what we needed. He checked the documents. He confirmed that I was a joint account holder on 3 accounts in Michael Chavez's name, and he handed us the transactions for the last 3 years. We left the bank with a folder full of papers. We got into Victoria's car. And there, in the parking lot, we started reviewing. What we found was devastating. Michael had 3 accounts, one official, where the company deposited his salary, and 2 secret ones. In one of those accounts, there were constant deposits. Small ones. $500, $1,000, $2,000, every 2 or 3 weeks. I added up the amounts. In 3 years, that account had received more than $90,000. Where did that money come from? I checked the references for the deposits. Some said reimbursement. Others said service payment. Others had no description. But they were all lies. Because I already knew those reimbursements were for fake invoices. Victoria pointed to the second secret account. Look at this. That account had larger transactions, transfers of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and they all came from my account, from the account where the savings Robert had left me were. Michael had been transferring my money to that account for 2 years, without me knowing, without me authorizing anything. I felt like I was going to throw up. He stole everything from me. Victoria put her hand on my shoulder. Yes, but now we have the proof. And with this, we're not just going to fire him. We're going to destroy him. I looked at those papers, those numbers, those transfers, and something inside me hardened. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was cold determination, calculated. What's next? Victoria started the car. Now we're going to investigate what he spent all that money on, because a man who steals $100,000 doesn't keep it under his mattress. He invests it, he hides it, or he spends it on something big. How are we going to know what? Victoria glanced at me. Because tomorrow, you're going to go into his house while he's at work, and you're going to look for everything you can find. Documents, contracts, invoices, whatever. What if he catches me? He won't catch you, because I'm going to make sure he's busy all day in a never-ending meeting. I nodded. I knew it was risky. I knew that if Michael found me there, things could get worse. But I didn't care anymore, because my son had taken everything from me. My money, my house, my dignity, my life. And now I was going to take everything from him. On Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, Michael received a call from George. He was summoned to an urgent meeting that would last all day, a general audit of the department. All managers had to be present. Victoria sent me a message. He's left. You have 3 hours. 4 at most. I took the keys she had given me. They were a copy of the keys to my house. The house Michael had taken from me and was now renting out. The house where I had lived for 40 years. I drove slowly. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it was going to explode. It wasn't fear. It was something else. It was the feeling of being about to discover something that there was no turning back from. I arrived at the house. I parked 2 blocks away. I walked with my head down. No one saw me. I opened the front door. The smell hit me immediately. It wasn't the smell of my house. It was another. A smell of expensive perfume, of new furniture, of a life I didn't recognize. I closed the door behind me. The silence was absolute. I walked through the living room. Everything had changed. The furniture Robert and I had bought was gone. Now there was a leather sofa, a huge television, modern art on the walls. Michael had erased every trace of us. I went upstairs. I went straight to his bedroom. The door was closed. I opened it slowly. Inside there was a king-size bed, a huge closet, everything impeccable. I searched the drawers, clothes, expensive watches, nothing important. Then I went to the study, a small room at the end of the hall. His desk was there, his computer, his files. I opened the first drawer, invoices, receipts, company papers, nothing I hadn't already seen. I opened the second drawer, more papers, contracts, bank statements. And then I found something, a manila envelope, thick, sealed with tape. I opened it carefully. Inside there were documents, many documents. The first was a purchase contract, a property, an apartment in downtown Boston. Bought a year ago. Price, $120,000. I felt the air escape me. Michael had bought an apartment I didn't know about, an apartment that cost more than he could afford with his salary. I kept checking. There were photos of the apartment interior. It was luxurious, modern, with a view of the city. And in one of the photos there was something that chilled my blood. A woman, young, around 30 years old, blonde, smiling, sitting on the sofa of that apartment. It wasn't his wife. I turned the photo over. There was something written on the back. For my love, thank you for this home. Miriam. Miriam. Michael had another woman, and he had bought her an apartment, with my money. My hands were shaking. I kept checking the envelope. There were more photos of the two of them together, in restaurants, on trips, at the beach. And then I found something worse. A birth certificate of a child. Name, Damian Chavez. Age, 2 years. Father, Michael Chavez. Mother, Miriam Navarro. My son had another child, a secret child, with another woman, and no one knew, not his wife, not my granddaughter Sarah. No one. I sat on the floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Michael had used my money to buy an apartment for his mistress, to support his secret son, to build a parallel life while I slept in a cold room and worked as a servant in his house. I took pictures of everything, of the contract, of the images, of the birth certificate. I saved everything on my phone. And I kept searching. In the third drawer, I found more contracts, investments, company stocks, accounts abroad. Michael had invested more than $200,000 in the last 3 years. $200,000 that he couldn't have earned with his salary alone. I did the math in my head. My money, $35,000. The fake company invoices, $90,000, the investments and the apartment. More than $300,000 in total. Almost $200,000 were missing. Where had he gotten so much money? I kept checking. And then I found a document that explained everything. It was a contract with a shell company, a company that didn't really exist. And that company had paid Michael $150,000 in commissions for consulting services. But those services had never been provided. Michael had created fake invoices, fake contracts, fake reports, everything to justify those payments. And the company that had supposedly paid was registered in someone else's name, a certain Adam Miller. I searched for that name online. I didn't find anything. He didn't exist. It was a fake name. But there was an address for the registration of the shell company. And that address was his mother-in-law's house, his wife's mother. Michael wasn't acting alone. His wife knew. His mother-in-law too. Everyone was involved. Everyone had stolen from me. I took photos of everything, every document, every contract, every fake invoice. And when I finished, I put everything back exactly as it was. I closed the drawers. I turned off the lights. I left the house. I walked back to the car. I got in. I closed the door. And then the tears started to fall. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of disgust. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a liar, a traitor, a man who had built an empire of lies on my back. And his wife. The woman I had welcomed into my family. The woman I had treated like a daughter. She had betrayed me too. I drove back to Victoria's house. I went in without knocking. She was waiting for me in the living room. "Did you find anything?" I showed her everything. The photos, the documents, the birth certificate, the fake contracts, the shell company. Victoria checked every image. Her face grew harder with each discovery. "This is worse than I thought. Much worse." I couldn't speak. I just cried in silence. Victoria put the phone down on the table. "Your son didn't just steal from you. He stole from the company. He committed tax fraud. He created a fake identity. He laundered money. And he has a secret family that he supports with stolen funds." I nodded. "And his wife knows. His mother-in-law too. Everyone is involved." Victoria thought for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a number. "George, I need you to come home now. It's urgent." She hung up. She looked at me. "This is no longer just a work problem. This is criminal. And we're going to need lawyers. And probably the police." I felt a shiver. "The police?" Victoria nodded. "Betty, your son committed fraud. Forgery of documents, tax evasion, money laundering. This isn't solved with a firing. This is solved with a lawsuit. And possibly with jail time." The word jail echoed in my head. He was my son, even after everything. Even after knowing what he had done. He was still my son. But I couldn't protect him anymore. I couldn't pretend I didn't know. I couldn't let him continue destroying lives. Victoria put her hand on mine. "I know it's hard. I know he's your son. But this has to end. Not just for you, but for all the people he will continue to hurt if we don't stop him." I took a deep breath. I dried my tears. "What do I have to do?" Victoria smiled, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a war smile. "First, we're going to gather all the evidence. Then, we're going to present it to a lawyer. And then, we're going to confront your son. But not alone. Not in private. But in front of the whole company. In front of his wife. In front of everyone who believed in him." What if he denies everything? Victoria shook her head. He won't be able to deny anything. Because we have documents, we have photos, we have bank records, we have everything. That afternoon, George arrived at the house. Victoria showed him everything I had found. He checked every document with a look of disbelief. When he finished, he only said one thing. Tomorrow we fire him, and the day after tomorrow, we file the lawsuit. I nodded, but there was something else, something I needed to know. What about my granddaughter? Does Sarah know anything about this? Victoria shook her head. I don't think so. She's young. She probably has no idea. But we'll find out. That night, lying in the bed of the room Victoria had given me, I thought about Sarah, about how I had watched her grow up, about how I had taken care of her when she was a baby, and I thought about how Michael was using her, how he had used me, how he used everyone, and I knew I had to protect her, even if it meant destroying her father, because that's what mothers do. They protect, even when it hurts, even when it means losing everything. The next day, while reviewing more documents in my office, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me I should. Hello? Grandma? It was Sarah, my granddaughter. Her voice sounded broken, scared. Sarah, are you okay? I need to see you. Please, don't tell Dad. Don't tell anyone. Just come. She gave me an address, a coffee shop across town. She hung up before I could ask more. I sent a message to Victoria explaining. She replied immediately. Go, but be careful, and record everything she tells you. I drove to the coffee shop. It was a small place, quiet. Sarah was sitting at a table in the back. When she saw me walk in, she stood up. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. I went over. She hugged me and started crying again. Grandma, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. Calm down. I'm here. Tell me what's wrong. We sat down. She took a deep breath. She wiped her tears with a napkin. Dad asked me to sign some papers 2 weeks ago. He told me it was for a savings fund, that he was going to invest money for my future, for when I started college. I nodded. I knew where this was going. And I signed, without reading, because I trusted him, because he's my dad. Sarah took some documents out of her backpack. She put them on the table. They were wrinkled, stained with tears. But yesterday I found copies of those papers on his desk, and I read them. And they're not for a savings fund, Grandma. They're contracts. Contracts where I appear as a partner in a company I don't know. I took the documents. I checked them. My blood ran cold. It was the Shell company, the same company Michael had used to launder money. And now Sarah was registered as a partner, with 20% of the shares. That meant that if someone investigated that company, Sarah would appear as an accomplice, as part of the fraud. Michael was using his own daughter to hide his crimes. I felt like I was going to explode with rage, but I held back. Sarah needed me to be calm. Did you say anything to your dad? She shook her head. I tried to talk to him last night, but when I asked him about the company, he got furious. He yelled at me. He told me I didn't understand anything, to stop sticking my nose where it didn't belong. Her eyes filled with tears again. And then Mom came in, and instead of defending me, she told me to listen to Dad, to stop asking questions, to trust them. I took her hand. Sarah, listen to me carefully. Your dad is using you. He made you a partner in that company so that if something goes wrong, you also go down. so that you appear as guilty of things you didn't do. She looked at me in horror. Why would he do that? Because your dad has been stealing. For years, he stole from me. He stole from the company where he works. And now he's involving you. Sarah started to tremble. It can't be. He's my dad. He wouldn't do that. I took out my phone. I showed her the photos I had taken, the apartment, the woman, the child's birth certificate. Sarah looked at the images. Her face changed, from confusion to shock, from shock to devastation. Dad has another child. Yes, a 2-year-old boy, with another woman. He bought her an apartment, and he paid for everything with stolen money. Sarah dropped the phone on the table. She covered her face with her hands. She cried uncontrollably. People in the coffee shop were looking at us, but I didn't care. I let her cry. I let her get it all out. When she finally calmed down, she looked at me with red, swollen eyes. What am I going to do, Grandma? You're coming with me. You're going to talk to the company lawyers. And we're going to get your name off that shell company before it's too late. What if Dad gets angry? I took her face in my hands. Your dad no longer has power over you, or over me, or over anyone. Because in 2 days, everyone is going to know what he's done, and he's going to pay for every lie, for every theft, for every life he destroyed. Sarah nodded. She wiped her tears. And for the first time in that conversation, I saw something different in her eyes. Determination. That afternoon, I took Sarah to Victoria's house. I told her everything my granddaughter had told me. Victoria immediately called her lawyer. The lawyer arrived an hour later. A serious man, in a dark suit, with a folder full of papers. Sarah explained everything to him. She showed him the contracts she had signed. The lawyer reviewed them carefully. This is serious. Your father involved you in a money laundering scheme. If this goes to trial, you could be charged as an accomplice. Sarah turned pale. But I didn't know anything. I just signed what he asked me to. The lawyer nodded. I know, and that's what we're going to prove. But I need you to do something. I need you to write a statement, explaining exactly how your father convinced you to sign. What did he tell you? How did he manipulate you? Sarah looked at Victoria. Then she looked at me. Will that help? It will help you, and it will help destroy your father's case. Sarah took a deep breath. She nodded. I'll do it. That night, while Sarah was writing her statement in another room, Victoria and I stayed in the living room. She was reviewing all the documents we had gathered. We have enough, more than enough. Fraud, forgery, money laundering, technical bigamy because he has 2 families, and now exploitation of a minor by involving Sarah. I nodded, but something inside me still hurt. Victoria noticed it. I know what you're thinking. What? That he's still your son, that maybe there's a part of you that wants to forgive him. I didn't answer, because she was right. Victoria came closer. She sat beside me. Betty, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting him continue to hurt people. You can forgive him in your heart if you want, but that doesn't change that he has to pay for what he did. I know. And think about Sarah. If we don't stop him now, he's going to keep using her. He's going to ruin her life, like he ruined yours. Those words hit me hard, because they were true. If I didn't act, Sarah would end up like me, destroyed, used, discarded, and I wasn't going to let that happen. You're right. We'll do what has to be done. Victoria smiled. Good, because tomorrow is going to be a very long day. The next day, The lawyer filed a formal complaint with the authorities. Corporate fraud, forgery of documents, money laundering, everything backed up with irrefutable evidence. He also filed a request to remove Sarah's name from the shell company and a protective order so Michael couldn't go near her. Everything was in motion, but something was still missing, something I needed to do. I needed to talk to Michael's wife, to Sarah's mother, to the woman who had betrayed me. Victoria didn't agree. It's dangerous. She might warn Michael. She might destroy evidence. She won't do that, because I'm taking Sarah with me, and when she sees what her husband did to her own daughter, she'll have to choose. Either she's with him, or she's with her daughter. Victoria thought about it. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but keep your phone recording, and if something goes wrong, get out of there immediately. That afternoon, Sarah and I went to the house that had been mine, the house that now hurt me to look at. We rang the doorbell. Michael's wife opened it. When she saw me, her face hardened. What are you doing here? I came to talk, and I brought Sarah. She looked at her daughter. She noticed her red eyes, her broken expression. Sarah, come in. You don't. But Sarah spoke. If Grandma doesn't come in, neither do I. Her mother hesitated. Finally, she stepped aside. We went in. We sat in the living room, the same living room where I had cleaned, where I had cooked, where I had served as a slave. I spoke bluntly. Your husband has another woman, another child. He bought them a $120,000 apartment with stolen money. She looked at me with hatred. You're lying. Sarah took out her phone. She showed her the photos, the apartment, the woman, the child, the birth certificate. Her mother looked at the images. Her face changed, from rage to shock, from shock to pain. It can't be. And there's more. Michael involved Sarah in a fraud. He made her sign papers for a fake company. If the police investigate, she could go to jail. Because of your husband. The woman looked at her daughter. Is that true? Sarah nodded. Dad made me sign. He told me it was for my future. But it was a lie. It was to hide his stolen money. Her mother collapsed. She started crying. And at that moment, I knew that she hadn't known anything, that Michael had also deceived her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah came over. She hugged her mother, and I stayed there, watching that family break apart, knowing that it was all my son's fault. After that conversation, Michael's wife made a decision. She filed for divorce. She took Sarah out of the house, and they went to live with her mother. But before leaving, she did something I didn't expect. She called me on the phone. Betty, I need to ask for your forgiveness, for everything, for how I treated you, for how I made you feel. I didn't know everything he was doing, but that doesn't excuse me. I saw how he treated you, and I didn't do anything. Her voice was broken, sincere. And I am so sorry about your money, about your house, about everything. If I could go back in time, I would do things differently. I didn't say anything for several seconds, because I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I wanted to. But then I thought about Sarah, and how her mother had chosen to protect her, and that was what mattered. Thank you for telling me, and thank you for getting Sarah out of there. I hung up, and I felt something inside me loosen. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a start. 2 days later, Michael was officially fired. George called him into his office. He showed him all the evidence, the fake invoices, the invented contracts, the illegal transfers. Michael tried to defend himself. He tried to lie. but there was no denying what was in front of him. You're fired, and tomorrow we are filing a formal lawsuit for fraud and theft. We estimate you stole more than $90,000 from this company, and that's not counting what you stole from your mother. Michael turned pale. Mr. Morgan, please, I can explain. I can give it back. Give me a chance. George looked at him with contempt. There are no more chances. Collect your things and get out of the building. Now. Michael walked out of that office with a box in his hands, with his career destroyed, with his reputation ruined. And I saw him leave. From the window of my office on the 3rd floor, I saw him walk to his car. I saw him get in. I saw him sit there, not moving, for almost 20 minutes. And I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel guilt. I only felt justice. But the worst for him had not yet come. A week later, the police arrived at his house with an arrest warrant. Corporate fraud, forgery of documents, money laundering, tax evasion. They handcuffed him in front of the neighbors, in front of the people who knew him, in front of everyone who had once thought he was a successful man. Victoria called me to tell me. He's been arrested. He's going to spend the night at the precinct. He has a hearing tomorrow. And what's going to happen? The lawyer says that with all the evidence we have, he's going to be found guilty. He will probably get between 5 and 10 years in prison. 5 to 10 years? My son. In prison. That night I couldn't sleep, not because I felt bad for him, but because I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, I knew he deserved to pay. On the other, he was still my son, the boy I had raised, the boy who once hugged me and told me he loved me. When had he turned into this? When had he stopped being my son and become a monster? I had no answers. The next day I went to the hearing, not because he asked me to, but because I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eyes and know if there was anything left of the son I once had. I entered the courtroom. I sat in the back. Michael was at the front, with a defense lawyer who looked tired, his hands handcuffed, his face haggard. When he saw me, our eyes met, and for a second, I saw something that might have been regret, or maybe fear. But then he looked away, and I knew there was nothing left to save. The judge read the charges: fraud, forgery, money laundering, one after another. Every word was a blow. The prosecutor presented the evidence, the documents, the photos, the bank records, everything I had found. Michael's lawyer tried to argue that it had been a mistake, that his client was under a lot of pressure, that he intended to pay everything back. But the judge didn't believe him. Mr. Chavez, you didn't just steal money. You stole your mother's dignity. You stole your employer's trust. And even worse, you involved your own minor daughter in your criminal activities. Michael lowered his head. I have no choice but to declare you guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be handed down in 30 days, but I anticipate it will be between 6 and 8 years in prison. 6 to 8 years. Michael broke down. He started crying. He asked for forgiveness. He begged for another chance. But it was too late. Too late. They took him out of the room in handcuffs, and I stayed there sitting, feeling a huge emptiness in my chest. Outside, Victoria was waiting for me. She hugged me without saying anything. Are you okay? I don't know. It's normal. He's your son. No matter what he did, he's still your son. I nodded, because she was right. But I also knew something else. I knew I had done the right thing, that I couldn't keep protecting someone who had destroyed me, who had destroyed others. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Michael, from jail. I opened it with trembling hands. Mum, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I stole from you. I used you. I treated you worse than an animal. And I have no excuse. I spent years blaming you for my failures, telling myself that you were the reason my life wasn't perfect, that you were a burden, that you took my money, time, freedom. But the truth is, I was the problem. I was always the problem. And now I'm here, paying for what I did. And all I can tell you is that I'm sorry. I'm sorry with every part of my being. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to visit me. I don't expect anything. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I lost. And it's not the money. It's not the job. It's you. I lost the only person who was always there, who always loved me unconditionally, who gave me everything without expecting anything in return. And now it's too late. I love you, Mum, even if I don't deserve to say it. Michael. I folded the letter. I put it away in a drawer, and I cried. I cried for the son I lost, for the years I lost, for the life I lost. But I also cried with relief, because it was finally over. I was finally free. Victoria helped me get my house back. The lawyers forced Michael to return it. I also recovered some of my money, not all of it, but enough to live with dignity. Sarah came to visit me twice a week. She told me about school, about her dreams, about her life, and I listened to her, and I told her everything was going to be okay, because it was going to be. Her mother also came sometimes. We drank coffee, we talked, we weren't friends, but we were no longer enemies, and that was enough. 6 months later, I moved back into my house, the house where I had spent 40 years with Robert. I cleaned every corner, I painted the walls, I bought new furniture, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. One afternoon, I was sitting in the yard having tea when I heard the front door. It was Victoria, with a bag in her hand. I brought apple pie. May I come in? Of course. We sat together in the yard. We ate pie. We talked about everything and nothing. And at one point, Victoria looked at me and smiled. Do you know what the irony of all this is? What? That 20 years ago, you saved me without expecting anything in return. And now I saved you. And I don't expect anything in return either. I smiled. That's how the world works when it works well. She nodded. That's right. We stayed sitting there, watching the sun go down, feeling the gentle breeze, knowing that we had survived. And as I looked at the sky, I thought about everything that had happened, about the cold of that night, about the slammed door, about the lies, about the thefts, about the pain. But I also thought about Victoria, about Sarah, about justice, about the truth. And I knew that although I had lost a lot, I had also gained something. I had gained my dignity back. I had gained my freedom. I had gained my life. And that was more valuable than any amount of money. Because in the end, the only thing that really matters is being able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you did the right thing, that you didn't stay silent, that you didn't let them destroy you, that you fought, and you won, and I had won. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with truth, with evidence, with silent justice. And that victory was mine, only mine, and no one, ever, could take it away from me.